Hello, welcome to CarCast+Edmunds podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, Deandra, here with Alistair Weaver. Hello,
Hello. Good
fresh
morning.
off your trip to back to the motherland.
Fresh might be, yeah, the mother country. Fresh might be overstating it. I had a 11-hour flight back yesterday morning. One of those where, when you get up to go to the airport in the UK and you realize that nobody in LA has gone to bed yet. It was one of those days.
Yeah,
But it's fine. I was up at 5 this morning with jet lag, walking, going for a walk, but I'm okay. It was a great trip. I shouldn't complain. It was a really fun trip. Hadn't been to Goodwood Festival of Speed in years. So interesting to see how it's grown and evolved and, caught up with some people. So lots to talk about.
yeah, it's been a while since I've been out there as well, so it'll be good to catch up on some of that stuff. Let's go ahead and start with Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball in full swing and football season around the corner, Bet Online has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From MLB and UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. In between games, head on over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas style games, including poker and their live casino. Just head to the website today, and you can also take advantage of their leading VIP program with level up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. BetOnline, the game starts here. It's Goodwood. So Goodwood does such a great job, by the way, on their social media because they just really kind of show the hill climb. They just keep showing all these amazing cars going up the hill climb. We saw the all electric, like I want to say a Ford Lightning race truck, but I've seen that truck in person, and there's not really much Ford Lightning there at all. But they beat last year's run in the super van, same driver, by like three-quarters of a second. So they
That
they
thing was extraordinary. I went and had a look at it in real life, and they had, Ford has been doing this super truck idea, basically bolting massive engines into transit vans as they are in Europe. And they had all of them there in a collection. It was really cool. Go back to the, I think, 70s with the first one, or certainly
yeah,
in
the
the
first super
80s.
van.
Yeah, and then just see all the generations. And yeah, that thing is an extraordinary. I mean, you look at the rear diffuser. Everybody was
Yeah.
like gasping when by the rear diffuser is like the size of my house. It's massive. So I think it's built for Pikes Peak, wasn't it? So it's a bit big for the Goodwood Hill climb, but it's a very cool thing.
It scooted up the hill, man. It set another record. Whatever they did, they beat their super van from last year. It was out here, and I went and saw it. I think Adam Carolla was with me. We both went and saw that van, and oh well, we saw the truck. Sorry, and yeah, again, you're just like, look, this thing's. By the way, all electric, so it just has a high whining sound to it, and it's pretty interesting. But again, like we were talking about last week, it's like, do they continue down this path of developing, concept race vehicles, EV? Because what's going to happen with the Lightning and some of the other EVs? It's again, are they going to justify enough sales without EV tax credits and stuff? So,
Well, they're going to
uh,
have. I mean, if you think about it from Ford's perspective, if you think about Ford of Europe, Ford of China, and everything else, we have a very kind of blinkered view of the
yeah,
US, but EVs are still happening in Europe. It's still going to happen in the US, but this is one of the
yeah,
challenges, and I we can talk more about the Ionic Hyundai Ionic 6N. So that's why that was my invite out there, was to go and look at the launch of this. We'll talk more about it in a minute, but this is what everybody was talking about, that China's all in on EVs, and it was really interesting to walk around the paddocks and see all the Chinese brands, because they're now going to Goodwood and saying, "Hey, look, we're a proper, we're now fully established. We can mix with it's a very sort of middle class, affluent event."
yeah.
And all the Chinese brands are piling in. It was super interesting to see what they were up to, alongside, your Bentleys, your BMWs, your Porsches, and everybody else. So kind of an interesting melting pot. And of course, all of that is EV. And that was kind of what everybody was talking about. You've now got China is all in on EV, Europe's somewhere in the middle, but progressing towards EV, and then the US is kind of reversing out of EV. So it's a right mess.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Worldwide, I understand the development of concept vehicles, racing vehicles for Ford, but maybe their next version isn't going to be a truck or a van. Maybe it's going to be
Yeah.
something smaller that appeals more toward the global audience. But
Well, they've got the Mustang GTD as well, which was also going up the hill. So I think they've covered their bases a little bit on that.
I did see the GTD. It looked good, sounded good. I think the one they ran was like black or something like that. I was like,
Yeah.
probably not
Not
the
that
one I would have.
fast. I mean, it was fast, but it was. I mean, that's one of the challenges. Like the EVs are so fast that you got a van going up the hill several seconds faster than your new flagship gas supercar that's supposed to take on Le Mans. So
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's twisted themselves up in knots.
It's also fun to follow the Instagram accounts of guys like Dario Franchitti, because he drives a lot. He gets invited to drive a lot of things up the hill, and I think he drove a Schumacher F1 car, 17,000 RPM. It was just, it was just, he's like being able to get into this and try to drive this thing, and is like, what a treat. I'm sure that was pretty
There
cool.
was a lot of that. I mean, I think that's one of the amazing things about this event. Maybe you should just go back to first principle, just like if people don't listen first time, don't understand what Goodwood Festival of Speed is. This began so so Goodwood House, which is this massive country estate owned by the Duke of Richmond, which goes all the way back to God. I should have researched it, but it goes all the way hundreds of years, shall we say? I can't remember exactly when Goodwood House was built. But the Duke of Richmond's always been a kind of prominent figure in the British aristocracy. And if you go back sort of 30 years ish, I think the Duke, or 35 years, the Lord March, as he was then, Charles March, kind of had a decision to make that the inheritance tax in the UK is so high that what happens to these country houses, you either turn them into a museum and you've got thousands of tourists like traipsing through your front door every day and you live in like a little annex, which is what a lot of aristocratic families now do. Or he could look at what he had and say, how can I turn this into a business? And he had the house with a big driveway, which is literally like a 2 mile driveway. Plus he had a racing circuit, which racing circuit stroke airfield. So there's an old kind of very run down, derelict airfield, which the Spitfires had flown out of in World War II. So there's tons of like heritage and culture. Then he also had a horse racing track,
Hmm.
Goodwood. And then on top of that, he had all this additional land. And then over the last like 3 decades, he's done an incredible job of building the Goodwood Festival of Speed, which is started as basically him and his rich friends driving their cars up the hill and has become this
His
incredible
driveway.
event. Then he's done the Goodwood Revival, which was basically rebuilding the race circuit and then doing all these period events. There's the horse racing, which goes on. Rolls-Royce is now, their factory is situated on his land. So he's just turned himself. I mean, a tremendous entrepreneur. I mean, he's getting on a bit now. He's into his 70s, but he's done an incredible job of becoming this kind of global entrepreneur. And everybody moans about how expensive it is and how much he charges, and yet year after year it gets bigger and bigger. And it's a sort of now a mix. I went in the early days, and in the early days it was people with amazing cars, like old racing cars, driving up the hill, and it had this kind of almost clubby atmosphere. Now it's gone massively commercial. So you've got this split between, as you say, old Schumacher F1 cars, or going back to the very founding of Grand Prix racing in the early 20th century, all the way through to the present day. And alongside that, you've got all this road car stuff that's going on, and then you've got a rally stage. So it has become this massive kind of automotive spectacular. And after auto shows started to decline, events like this, and well, obviously Car Week in the US, have got more and more important. So I mean, I hadn't been for 8 years since I moved to the US, and I used to go every year, and I was amazed at how much it was big. It was big 8, 10 years ago, but it's got bigger still. It's a crazy event.
Yeah, this past week I had Gordon McCall on the show last week talking about Monterey Car Week and the Quail event, and how that has just grown over the years, and how all the events have, during that week or so have grown, and the attendance, the tickets sales and stuff. So, yeah, and we were talking about Goodwood and so many of these like historic events just really kind of growing over the years. Yeah, I think it's been probably 8 or 9 years since I've been out. Maybe we missed each other. Maybe I was there 9 years ago. You were last there 8 years ago.
I remember going out when Bill Goldberg was out there. That was, I think that
Oh
was,
yeah, so I was out there that year as well.
yeah.
So I've gone a couple times, but yeah, Adam and Goldberg and I were all out there one year. Um,
It's also,
we
but so it's about bringing the cars together and the people. Like if you follow your Formula One, they did a big World Championship thing this year, and they had Alain Prost, Nigel Mansell, Mika Hakkinen, Emerson Fittipaldi, Mario Andretti, all kind of in a line, all like chatting to each other, all driving their old cars up the hill.
yeah
And, Mansell, obviously a Brit growing up in that generation, Mansell was kind of a bit of a folk hero in the UK, and he was still in his old overalls, which you can still get into. Alain Prost still just looks like an old version of Alain Prost. And it was fantastic to see. And just the old race cars. And it's not just Formula One cars, you've got NASCAR, you've got, sports cars. And that history lesson of wandering around the paddock, and a bit like if you go to Laguna Seca during car week, it's the access is good. You can walk around, you can get close to the vehicles, everybody's pretty
yeah
relaxed, and you just get this sense of what cars were and what motorsport was for the last 120 years or so, and the danger of it. You look at these old, I mean, there's something that always gives me a kind of chill a little bit when you go and look at, like, there was an old sharp-nosed Ferrari, but then there was a kind of Can-Am car from 1970, and it had all the bodywork off, and you realize that basically your toes are in front of the front axle, and if you have any sort of head-on impact, your feet are the crumple zone. And I've seen this so many times, but you look at it and you just go, that's insane. And it's not like it looks insane and people were okay. It looks insane and everybody, huge proportion of the grid died. So you get this kind of extraordinary history lesson.
you go over and you look at like a Maserati birdcage, right?
Yeah,
And funny that it's called that because without much of the bodywork on it, it's just a bunch of thin round tubing, like the thickness of a pencil,
yeah.
but there's and it's just kind of weaved and welded together to look like a web, kind of like a bird cage, and and you're like, there's no way any of that can, like, it's barely enough to support its own structure. It looks like, I don't know how it would ever survive in an accident. And you're right. It's like, it's not supposed to survive in an accident. The safety features back then were basically non-existent, especially compared to where we are today with F1 and IndyCar
Well, it's
and
like the old Lotuses where you sat, I think they had a fuel tank by your right thigh, a fuel tank by your left thigh. And I think some of them even had a fuel tank kind of where you're, in between your legs, shall we say? I mean, some of it's mind blowing. I looked at the auto unions, which go back to the 1930s and was the forerunner of Audi. And no seatbelts. You wanted to get thrown out. If you crashed, you wanted to get thrown out. And these things like racing in France, like at Reims and things like that, were doing 170 miles an hour because they had like massive engines. It's just that they weren't very sophisticated on the rest of it. So. Yeah, it's a different era, and it's also kind of nice seeing some of like the young drivers. I was watching on Instagram earlier a conversation between Ollie Beerman, who's racing for Haas in Formula One, and talking to Alain Prost about his 1980s McLaren, and like having a conversation. What do you mean it's not got a sequential? And Prost saying no, it's H pattern. And you have to like lift off the throttle when you change up and you use a clutch. It's a gearbox, right?
yeah.
And it was like, that was kind of, I grew up watching Alain Prost race that car. I mean, I was a kid at the time, but it was just like this kind of wide eye kicking. Oh, you got like what, like an H pattern? What, like you have to throttle off and use your clutch when you change gear? I mean, yeah.
You know,
And you had 1,000 horsepower.
we've had a few cars out there over the years. Adam's had a few cars out there over the years, and when we went out, we basically shared a paddock space with Keanu Reeves and his team from Arch Motorcycles when he was just putting that together. And yeah, talk about cool stuff, even modern stuff. He was riding his motorcycle up the hill.
Yeah.
One of
Yeah,
his
there's a lot
Arch
of
bikes.
motorcycle races and stuff go up, and road races, track
Yep.
races. It's and so I think that's kind of where the event exists on different levels. If you just want to sit on the grandstand and kind of like listen to the noise and soak it all up, you can do that. You can walk around, check out all the new cars. You can, there's all that sort of, memorabilia, shall we say, or if you want to go and spend a fortune on I mean, obviously I did on a t-shirt for my kid. I went and did that. So
You know,
yeah, there's a lot to do.
one of the things I remember, and I'm sure this is still the case, when you get up closer to the event, the parking lot is a car show within itself. And when I was there, it had rained a bit. It was just a muddy mess. It was a muddy mess with just McLarens and Lamborghinis, and that's just get before you even get into the event.
That's right. And I think there was one year where I went where they had so much rain. And you had some of the F1 guys when Jenson Button was there. Actually, I think it was when we were working for the Honda Formula One team in F1, and the rain got so bad that they couldn't get these giant kind of RVs out of the car park. So they all had to find another, had to come back and like get a tractor and dig them out, the following week or something. So I mean, this year it was crazy hot. I left LA, flew to the UK, and the temperature went up like 12 degrees. And
Okay.
then you've got, but of course, it's like really hot, oppressive, and humid, and the country's not set up for it. So everybody was kind of frying, but it all like adds to what is a mega event. It's. I mean, I think 2 days is probably enough. You get a bit exhausted if you're there all 4 days, but it's so much to see, and if you don't even really have to be that much of a car fan. I think just the atmosphere and seeing everything go up the hill, and
You
they
know,
do a
and
really, really good
and
job.
this is the Festival of Speed. This is the hill climb where you can see everything from vintage to modern all go up the hill. But the revival, that's all vintage, and the whole event is period correct. Everybody dresses up period correct, whether
Yeah,
you're just
that's
in like a suit or a dress or like a mechanic's outfit or overalls. That's kind of fun too. It's kind of like a fancy Halloween in the middle of the year.
I think that's the if you're coming over from the US, and I know it's a big commitment and a cost and all the rest of it, but the Goodwood Festival of Speed is fantastic, but the revival is really special because the Festival of Speed's got a little bit commercial. Well, it's two things. In the revival, they race. In the Festival of Speed, it's a hill climb, so that changes the dynamic. But just it is like street theater. You just sort of go in and you're back in the 1950s, and if you don't dress up, you stand out a mile. So everybody does.
Yeah.
And it changes the dynamic because if you're, let's say you're Honda and you want to sell something, you're not allowed because you can't sell a contemporary Civic because it didn't exist in period. So you get a different kind of sponsor. It's more about banks, things like that. Unlike Porsche went there and are a sponsor, but then they have to do it all about their classic restoration. So they rebuild like a 1950s garage. And
Yeah.
so that's if you're thinking about like, a trip to Europe and going to go to one of these events, I would go the revival first just because it's such a extraordinary experience. And then, but the Festival of Speed is a great day out.
Also, when you go to the revival, yes, they're using the racetrack, not the driveway for the hill climb, but also there's like a vintage air show happening in the air.
That's right, because the in that was Goodwood Airfield is where the Spitfires, Battle of Britain, the Spit when Britain stood alone and all the rest of it, Spitfires flew out of there, Hurricanes. So you've got, and it's still to this day a working airfield, private airfield, and they always have Spitfires coming in just to see those incredible aircraft. And
Well, it adds to the whole idea of it being sort of a period correct event because as you're walking around looking at everyone's great attire and the
yeah,
cars, and then you look into the air and the planes are period correct.
yeah,
And it's fun. It's cool.
it's amazing.
So
It's a wonderful thing.
the Festival of Speed, I don't want to say they do like a theme, but they sort of celebrate something. It could be a featured mark, like a brand, or it could be like an era of like F1. But this year was Gordon Murray.
Yeah, so it's two things. It was Gordon Murray, and then it was like some of the Formula One champions getting together. Your Prost and your Hakkinen and Mansell and everybody else. But yeah, it was Gordon Murray. They had this huge sculpture in front of the house, which is something they do every year, and they had all of Gordon Murray's cars. Now, Gordon Murray is a bit of a kind of, many people might not have heard of him, but he was I mean, still going very well. Gordon Murray Automotive is doing well and building hypercars today, but he goes all the way back to the early 80s and some of the Brabham Formula One cars, and then McLaren F1 road car, of course, and so he's just when you look at what he had a hand in and how special those cars are. So it was a great tribute. Yeah, if you're on YouTube, just going through, they had a Colin McRae, who sadly, we sadly lost. They had a big celebration of his cars, Subarus, Ford World Rally cars, that kind of thing.
Yeah. By the way, we're
So
looking at this picture of one of the race cars without the body on it, and you can kind of see what we're talking about. We're like, good luck surviving in an accident.
yeah,
Like it's
any front on crash is your
that's
toast.
it, that's tough. But like these some of these older cars that we're talking about here, early 60s like this, like what a crazy machine, thin tires, like it just the idea that this stuff used to be raced and just sawing at the big giant wheel. There's obviously no power steering or anything in it. Just kind of kind of crazy. And where you sit, you could see the shifter you're talking about here. Just like I don't know how you shift with your left hand anyway, but that's me being American.
Yeah, yeah, you know.
And then the big display. There's always this big, huge sculpture, if you will, in front of the house, in front of the castle. Every year it's different.
It's not a castle. It's a country estate. There's a significant difference. But
Yeah.
one thing, I haven't got a
By
picture
whose
of it.
standards? Look at it.
I haven't got a picture. One of the nice things is you can go in. They had a Bonham's auction. Bonham's do an auction there, and you could
Yeah.
go in and see the cars. You actually go into Goodwood House, and I put on my Instagram at Weaver on Cars if you want to follow along. Lord March, well Duke of Richmond as he is now, has got this fabulous oil painting. So you go through his whole family over the centuries, and they're all in oil, all these oil paintings, and he has an oil painting of himself on the wall. And I was kind of asking the question, I fancy like having an oil painting commissioned. I had to think about like my pose and what I was wearing, but I think you haven't made it in life till you got an oil painting in your living room, one of your
Uh,
living rooms.
all right, let's I want to get into some of the cars and of course why you were invited out there to begin with. Um, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, so a number of things. You saw the new Jaguar in person. You talked about the Hyundai Ionic 6N. Why don't we start there? We were talking about EV before. The Ionic 6. We kind of got a teaser of this a week or so ago before you went out, but now you were there able to see it in person.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that was Hyundai were running I mean, this is kind of again the growth of Goodwood. Hyundai were actually running an event to invite global media for the launch of this car, and also they had the whole N team, all the development team out there, and so we've had the Ionic 5N, which is obviously the SUV, and this is the sister car, the sedan, and it's going to be the flagship of that range. So it basically a lot of it is shared with the Ionic 5. So you've got same two motors, one at the front, one at the rear, 600 and what is it, 641 horsepower. So a lot of that is the same, 568 pounds-feet of torque. But it's a sedan, so it's going to be lower center of gravity. It's a big car. They've extended the wheel arches. It's got a big spoiler on the rear. It's far from subtle. And we've actually got high hopes for it. We were pulling up the figures. I mean, Ionic 5N, the SUV, is as fast as a Porsche 911 GT3 to 60 in the quarter. They say it's going to be slightly faster, which is kind of believable given that it's a sedan. It just looked like I was thought that would they make it more subtle, because when they were like, no, the N brand is all about kind of extrovert appeal. So I've got really high hopes for it. But so I mean, it's got two electric motors, one front and rear. A lot of the N technology inside. They've very much kind of made it like a computer game. So you've got this fake shifting, which actually works really, really well. So you've got fake engine noises. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to kind of tune it and play with it through the electronics. They've even introduced on the 6N, which is new. They've now got like ambient lighting, which works as a rev limiter. So you've got these kind of fake gear shifts, which even involve little torque cuts, so you feel the gear shift as well as hear it. And now they're going to use the ambient lighting, presumably to turn red when you need to shift.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's neat.
yeah, they're really having some fun with it. And I spent a couple of days with their development team, and it's a really multinational team, but there's so much enthusiasm. It really reminds me of like spending time with people like the M division engineers from BMW and AMG and stuff in their, particularly in their heyday. That they're really onto something. They built this N range around gas powered cars plus all the EVs. They've got all the rally cars. They've got their heritage. They're building these kind of crazy prototypes like the N75. So they're really on a roll, and you can feel that kind of enthusiasm within the team. And I hope this is going to be. I mean, we know it's going to be really fast. The Ionic 5N is a hoot, so this can only be better because it's got a lower center of gravity. They've done a lot of work to the suspension. All the geometry is different. They've got electronic damping, so you should have a good combination of track stuff. They're doing a lot of work to make it track friendly and manage the batteries so you get more life on the track. So there's some really cool stuff in this car.
Well, I like what they, at least in this example, that they showed this sort of two-tone black and, or sorry, this blue and gray, uh, having that gray kind of kick up in the rear makes it look less like a sad face
It's like a
from the
blue. It's a
profile.
bit odd in the looks a bit odd in the pictures. It's
Yeah.
actually a new, slightly metallic blue. They have this kind of signature blue for the N range. They've tweaked it a little bit so it's a bit more metallic. And then they're also doing N performance parts. So they're going to do like an aftermarket kit. So the launch car has got it's got like a kind of 911 GT3 rear wing, but
Yeah.
then you can have an even bigger rear wing if you want. They're still working all this out for the US, how this will work. But yeah, it's I mean, I still like sedans more than SUVs, so this thing has a lot of appeal. The only thing about it, I mean, this is going to be a rival to Tesla Model 3 Performance. If you look at a gas car, BMW M3. The challenge was we were saying to the guys in the crowd, right, so how much, when's it on sale? And they couldn't tell us. And they couldn't tell us because of all the reasons we talked about last week, which is EV tax credit's gone away and everybody tends to lease these cars. And there's a tariff situation because this thing's made in Korea. So Hyundai obviously makes a lot of cars in the US, but this isn't. This is made in Korea. So they're now looking and say, well, hang on a minute. If we end up with a 25% tariff on this car, if you just it's normally the six is normally a bit cheaper than the five, so you'd say, well, it's going to be about 65 grand. But if you then put a 25% tariff on it and there's no EV tax break, you could end up with it being 80 grand plus. At which
Yeah.
point it ain't going to sell because a Tesla Model 3 performance is 55 and is built in the US. So without getting into the politics of it again, it's like, okay, how do we manage our way through this? And a lot of brands, a lot of people talking in Goodwood, other conversations last week are all about everybody thought that tariffs was basically going to go away. And the reality is it hasn't. And so everybody is now
Right.
saying, okay, how do we
May,
manage this?
maybe that 25% gets negotiated down to 10% when the dust settles on this. Maybe it's not going to be
Yeah,
as
but
high. Like we still
but
don't
it's
know
not
for
happening.
sure.
That's the problem. I mean, the UK did a deal that's gone from 2.5 to 10%. And I was talking to the Bentley team, and they were like, well, an extra 7.5% on a Bentley. Yes, we have an affluent customer base, but you've suddenly gone from, 300,000 to 320,000. And no matter how affluent your customer base is, if you're putting your cars up by 10% or whatever, it becomes a big deal. So
Yeah.
yeah, we don't know. We're kind of betting on it, saying, look, it'll be here early next year, about 65 grand. And that it feels like it has to be, otherwise they're going to struggle to sell it. But if you've got all the tariffs and everything else, it becomes eight. I mean, can anybody make any money at 65 grand? This is a very sophisticated car, but who is going to spend 80 grand on a Hyundai Ionic 6N? I just don't see it.
Do we know how well the Ionic 5N has sold?
I think the 85N, I haven't got the figures in front of me. I think it's developed a kind of, it'd be wrong to call it a cult following, but I think it's a sort of those in the know car. And I think the whole N lineup is starting to develop a bit of a fan club.
Well, it also it's not really uncommon for car companies to have a halo car that they admit they lose money on, right? And maybe the Ioniq 6N does come here and they eat a lot of that tariff and they know they're not making a huge margin on it, but they just want a halo car out on the streets in an effort to sell a lot of the Ionic 6s or whatever's built
Yeah.
here in America. So maybe there is a little bit of that they're considering.
I think that's probably right, and that's why I do expect it to come. I don't think they're just going to cancel it. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that they've had an international launch of something which then gets cancelled, but I don't see it. I think it's going to happen, and I think you're right. It'll be a Halo car that will sell in pretty small numbers to a really committed
Yeah.
base. But I think everybody's sort of saying this is like, oh well, we can, do we losing money? Are we just going to lose money on these Halo cars? I mean, I remember Ford. I've shot a documentary on development team of the Focus RS, and they were adamant that this car had to, yes, it had a marketing benefit and made everybody want to Focus, but it had to kind of stand up on its own. And this thing, and that's why they sold 30,000, I think it was, and there was a break-even point, and they managed to surpass
Yeah.
that. But there's a point at which you just can't keep, it can't just be a marketing expense. You've got to actually, because if you think about it, it's not just developing the car, it's the marketing, the dealers. There's so much that goes with the
Yeah.
physical product.
When you were talking to the group behind these N cars, this new division that they've developing, getting more into high performance vehicles, getting into racing, uh, did they talk much about, or did you get a chance to ask, is their focus going to just be on electrification? Are they gonna have high performance gas cars? Are they gonna really compete with like an M3 at some point?
I mean, they already do in that they have the Elantra N, so it's not just the attention focus on the Ionics because they're the really fast ones. They already do N cars of the Veloster, isn't it? But also the Elantra, and the Elantra N is a really nice car. It's just that they don't have a model which is crazy fast. And I actually asked that question. It's like, is there a point at which you do an Elantra N with a, crazy turbo engine or something? And
Yeah.
I get the impression that that was never the plan. And it might be too expensive to develop as something that would basically be for America. But they might consider it down the line. But they don't have. There's nothing natural for them. I think more likely that would be Genesis doing. Genesis is going to have and Genesis luxury brand of Hyundai. They're going to have the Magma range. So I think it's more likely that you will see hot versions of like a G80 or something like that.
Yeah. And they're getting into racing more. We were talking a minute ago about what Hyundai wants to do, what Genesis wants to do, and we've seen the Genesis endurance car, the prototype or whatever that they're developing. I assume we've just seen the prototype. I don't know if it's fully functional yet, but yeah, they want to race Le Mans. They want to get into you know some
And
high level
I asked that
racing.
question to the engineers because some of them are working on both. I said, how does this break down? And their argument was, well, N is all about like, I mean, they do rallying. It's all about in your face, extrovert performance, a bit sort of scrappy, if you like. And then Genesis is going to be more about, refined. It's sort of, it will do everything, but it will do it in a slightly more subtle way. Although looking at the concept cars, which are bright orange and have massive body kits, there's a bit of a contradiction there. So we'll wait and see. But it's also, they were quite adamant that apart from the GV60, which is the same platform and everything else, same underpinnings as an Ionic 5N and the 6N, the rest of them are actually different. So they're not particularly worried about it. But it's,
What does the
yeah,
N
I
stand
think
for?
I like the Ionic 6N. I know a lot of people find the looks challenging. I think the facelift, the mid-cycle refresh has made it a lot better looking. I'm excited by this car, and it's also works. It's got tons of rear space, interior's nice, decent trunk. It actually works as a car.
Did they tell you what the N stands for?
No, but they've got all these. They've got all these like slightly comedic expressions, like it's going to be a corner rascal and things like that. When something doesn't quite translate into English.
Yeah.
I forget what it is. I didn't put it. There's a rating in the press release. It's a corner rascal. There's about four different like criteria.
Right. Okay.
But the development team love Edmunds U-Drags because I was wearing my Edmunds U-Drags cap and the guy was like, somebody asked a question about would you do like a fake manual gearbox? And he said, no, it's just because it just compromises performance, and then we wouldn't win the Edmunds U tracks. And I was like, hey, I'm famous.
You're like, hey, that's my hat.
Yeah, that's my
Also
hat.
available for purchase.
Yeah. Actually, the hat's not yet. Maybe we have sold T-shirts now on YouTube.
Yeah,
We now have a
well,
new revenue stream. You know, they put our little merch range on YouTube. A few people have bought them. It's good.
yeah,
I think we've made $50 now. It's good.
sweet.
Yeah,
That's where it starts.
exactly.
All right, so moving on a little bit here, the new Jaguar. You got a chance to kind of go and see this in person, and I'm curious to hear what you think of the vehicle, but then also just sort of the strategy overall. Is this like what's going to happen with Jag? Because on one hand, we were like, I don't know, it didn't seem like a good launch, but on the other hand, everyone was talking about it
Yeah.
still for good or bad, and then it's gone down. It's now there's articles about flubbed launches and stuff. I'm like, I don't know if it was a flubbed launch. I think everyone was talking about it. I think it maybe polarizing is an idea, but anyway, what do you think of the car?
Yeah, I think all of that is true. But they had, the one problem Jaguar always had, I know we talked about this on shows in the past, the problem they always had is nobody cared.
Yeah,
And every single, it's like, oh, back in the 60s, we were quite good. And it's like, nobody cares. And so, now they've got this really provocative car. They had this really sort of controversial, I mean, bear in mind, we're still 2 years away from it being launched at that time. So, and it was, they spent a fortune on these stands. It was like the size of a dealership. And now they had all the sort of Land Rover products, Defender, Range Rover, Discovery in one area. Then you kind of walked across a walkway and into Jaguar, and they had two cars in there. And what was super interesting to me is just earwigging. Do you know that expression? Did that translate into American, earwigging? No, that's a
no.
good one. There you go. I'm teaching you something today. Earwigging is basically where you stand next to somebody and just like listening to their conversation.
Oh, eavesdropping.
Eavesdropping, but earwigging is yeah, I didn't know. There you
Yeah.
go. Eavesdropping. But just listening to like the chat, because you got, I mean, it's kind of predominantly male audience, but it's also kind of very sort of middle class, pretty affluent audience that goes to Goodwood. They know that the demographic's pretty tight. And just listening to like some people, I love it, or some people hate it, and but everybody was talking about it, and everybody wanted to see it, and and the shape of it is the first time I've seen it in real life, and you get a sense of the scale and the proportions. I really like it. I don't know, that might be a controversial thing to say. I hope the production car doesn't differ too much from it. I think it's controversial. But I think they had to do that. My concern is, are there enough people going to spend 150 grand plus on an EV at the moment? I think that's a different question. But
Hmm.
just looking at it as a cool piece of design, as a provocative piece of design, I thought this is really fun.
Yeah. Okay.
And if they'd done another boring SUV or just something that looked like the Germans, nobody would have cared. There you go. Look at that if you're on YouTube. And it's still matte paint, and they had one with the interior open, and I think it's really good.
Yeah. I It's such a departure, like this whole brand, the colors, the
I think what was interesting is like a theme at Goodwood. If you were walking around as I did, and I was kind of really keen to go and see some of the European brands, which we don't get. You get a real kind of feel for where the whole global market is. And I took a picture of Renault has decided that the Chinese brands are in Europe, but they're particularly in the UK, and the UK hasn't imposed tariffs like the rest of Europe has on the Chinese brands. So people like BYD, MG are making huge inroads into the UK market with some. And I went and had a look and sit in the cars, and they're good. I haven't driven one, but the fit and finish is good. The technology looks good. The MG has this Cyberster, which is this kind of $60,000 roadster. You can understand why people buy them. They look like European cars or American cars. They've got, nice interiors. They appear well built, lots of technology, sensible pricing. And then you look at what the Europeans are doing to try and combat this, and Renault has decided that, well, actually, what have we got? We've got heritage. So they've gone back in time and they've kind of reinvented the Renault 5 and the Renault 4, and they're as EVs, and they look really charming. Like the Renault 4
Okay.
was this kind of iconic French car that they sold, billions of over decades. Come back in as it was some really, really cool detailing, like this, like the sort of padded headlining, and it's the sort of thing you get into and say, you know what, this would be a really kind of cute family car. So I think they're really onto something. And like the Renault 5 had got a baguette holder. It's
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
really silly, but I looked at it, I was like, that's just really cool. It makes me smile. Why don't you do, that more people should be doing this. And this seems to be, the direction of travel, that if you are a long established heritage brand, then you've got to build on that. It's the same way that, fancy watch brands, Rolexes and everything else, the Oyster has been in production forever, and you go back to your heritage, IWC, all of them. So, that seems to be the pattern that everybody's saying, well, hang on a minute, we need, the one thing we have got is brand and history and, storytelling. And then Jaguar's kind of gone in the other direction, which said, well, we tried this, but frankly, everything since the 60s has been a bit ropey. So let's just let's just try and take what we might have been in the 50s and 60s, which was avant-garde, dramatic, thought-provoking, provocative, and reimagine that. So I hope it works. I have a soft spot for Jaguar Land Rover generally. I think on the Land Rover side, they're doing a really good job. They've got problems with Discovery, but the Range Rover and the Defender are good. So we shall see. But yeah, that was fun to see. Went and had a look at it, went and had a chat with Bentley. They had a whole bunch of customer events there, which was quite fun. Porsche had done something that was really cool. They'd built this big sort of pavilion, but then they'd also invited people in Porsches to come in and park their car. So that you were talking about the cool car parks earlier. There was a Porsche car park, and that was really cool.
Yeah. Okay.
You can tell I had a really good time. I'm quite enthused by all of this.
Um, let's talk about the Callum Mini real quick.
Yeah, this is a car that popped up a few weeks ago, and I sent Ian Callum used to be the chief designer at Jaguar. He also did Aston Martin's, like the DB9, and worked for Tom Walkinshaw Race. And I mean, he's a legendary British car designer, and
Yeah.
I
And
think you know
I've
him
talked
pretty
to him a
well,
few
Matt. And I
times. He's been by the studio. We've had him on the show a number of times. And uh, yeah, I like him.
he's a lovely, lovely guy. And after he left Jaguar, he set up this design consultancy, and they've just done this original Mini. And I dropped him a note about it, and because I just said I think you've done a really nice job here, and he said he'd never done a project that has more attention than this. My own read on it is there's two reasons for that. One is everybody loves minis, particularly if you're British. The second part of it is it's almost accessible. So most of these resto mod cars, and this is what it is, most resto mod cars, they're like, oh, 500,000, a million, 2 million,
Yeah.
3 million. And, for 99.9% of the population, they're just completely otherworldly. This Mini is about 100,000 bucks, starts about 100,000 bucks, and is therefore like in the realm of maybe I could take a bit of money out of the house. Maybe I could do this. Maybe if I really desperately wanted one, I could kind of get the money together for a lot of people. And I think that's part of the appeal. You can then go in, you can bespoke it. It's sort of Callum plus Wooden Picket, which is kind of a British mini builder. The one that they had has been built for David Gandy, the very cool supermodel, who I made the mistake of having my photograph stood next to at one time. And I just thought it was a really sweet thing. It's It's only got like the 1.3 engine, which is tuned a little bit, but they've had special wheels made. It was really charming, and I could see myself kind of lusting after one of these.
Yeah. They did a nice job with it.
Just tweak the engine a little bit, just 13-inch wheels instead of the original 10-inch wheels, but they've kept the character of a Mini, and I think if you're living in the city or you're having it, I mean, it's a fun car. It's not an everyday car, but you're always the safety of a original Mini isn't the best, but as long as you take that on board, they're be a cool thing to knock around in.
Yeah, I like it. I like what they're doing, and you're right. In this world of these sort of reimagined vehicles of Porsche 550s and Singer Porsches and whatever. They're all so expensive now to get anything of that caliber, or even close to that caliber for around 100 grand is impressive. I mean, 100 grand's a lot for a Mini, but also it's just like,
It's your
everything
keep
else
forever
is
car.
500,000 up.
It's your. I'm going to do this entirely to my taste, and I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to keep it forever. So it was, yeah, it's good. They had a whole bunch of resto mods there. They had a early 70s Range Rover, which had been given the treatment, and they were all kind of nice. And obviously, it's a big craze at the moment, and Singer kind of inspired a lot of this. But you wonder how big the audience is for it.
And I wonder what we're going to see over here now that that event is done. Are we going to see the Jag? Are we going to see the Mini? Are we going to see any of those show up at Monterey Car Week? Maybe not at the Quail, but maybe on the concept lawn at Pebble.
I think they should bring the Jag. I think that would be like the ideal audience, a very kind of
Yeah.
design literate, car interested audience. I don't know whether they are. I haven't heard anything. But I think it'd be an ideal opportunity to show off the Jag.
Yeah. Um, all right. Anything else?
No, I just need to catch up on some jet lag.
Yeah.
And then I go back to Europe in 10 days' time for a little vacation. So I think we'll get a
Right.
couple
But
more
with the
shows if we
family,
go.
what you go with the family.
Yeah, this time I was flying on my own. It was a bit more tolerable. Next time I fly with the kids. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, sounds like a good trip. I'm glad you got to go out there and check out Goodwood. I wish I could have gone. Um, and yeah, we'll later this week, I think hopefully we'll get Goldberg back on the show. He had his big match, his big wrestling match on Saturday. His friends, his family. I think he had something like 100 people there for his big retirement match. So we'll
Is
get
that
sort
it
of a,
now? Is he done?
he's done. He made a speech afterward, which WWE cut off during the live broadcast.
No
So I
way.
was a little, that's it. And it's so funny because they cut off like halfway through and then they posted on they posted on their social media accounts the speech, and on the social media accounts, they they just posted the broadcast version, not the full version, so they cut off half of it again as well. But his wife, his kids, his friends. Tony Stewart was there. Leah was there, like all in the ring with him afterward, and I thought he did a great job. And I'd love to get the download from him. I think he's recovering a little bit. It's physically intense. Any way you look at it, I don't care. If you're 58 years old or 22 years old,
Is
like
he
it is.
58 now?
He's 58. He just wrestled at 58 years old.
Jeez. I knew he was in his 50s. I didn't think he was 58. But yeah, I mean, hats off, right? I mean, also, it's a pretty is it that outfit doesn't leave a lot to the imagination, and you're 58 years old. I mean, I wouldn't dress like that, and I'm not 58, but yeah,
Listen,
I
that's
also haven't
not
spent.
that's not lost on him. Every time he's just like, years ago when he was doing a comeback and he was 10 years younger, he's like, oh, do I want to be in front of millions of people in my underwear again? I'm 50, and it was just like, like, do I want to? And even now he's like, and and I asked him, like, are you gonna change the outfit? Are you gonna do something to it? And he's like, well, it's not really. There's not a lot you could do here. And I was like, oh, okay. You can't go in with a shirt on and wrestle because that's not Goldberg,
Yeah,
right? Like a lot of wrestlers, there's a few that do, but that's not him. That's not his character. But listen, look at any of the social media stuff of this guy in the ring, and I'm telling you, 58 years old. I don't care how old that is.
right.
I wouldn't want to mess with him.
It's hugely impressive.
Yeah,
Hugely
he did a
impressive.
great job, and it wasn't easy to do.
No.
So anyway, love to get the download from him and see how he's doing and see if it went as well as he thought it was. I know he always wants to put on a good show. I think he did a good job. And the guy that he was fighting, Gunther, I think did a good job in that at the end of the match just left and gave the moment to Goldberg, gave the
Yeah.
moment to his family because it was the end. It was the main event. It was the end of the whole thing. Give him an opportunity to say thank you to the fans and how much he appreciated them, and put a cherry on top of this wonderful career that he's done. So yeah, anyway, looking forward to that. I think he'll have a bit to say about it, but Bill's an interesting guy. He may go, it's done, it's over. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It's the history.
Anyway, well, on that, we'll wrap it up. I know there's a bunch that's been going on at Edmunds. We'll get into next week. I'm doing lots of testing and all kinds of fun stuff over there. So,
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can talk about.
all right, guys, check it out. Edmunds.com, of course, is the website, and Edmunds on YouTube. And we appreciate you guys listening. Until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.